If I can ask everyone to be seated, get your coffee, and we're going to start the meeting in just a few minutes. We do have to establish quorum, so we need to make a count. Can you hear me? I'm going to have to really remember to keep this up close. All right, I'm going to ask the counters, Tad Creasy and Donna Bernard, to count those who are members and you haven't voted yet on any of the ballot measures. So everyone who was able to vote today and hasn't voted before through the absentee ballot, will you please raise your hand so that we can make a count? Okay, just make sure. $45 total? Okay. I think we have quorum. We have 45 people. Okay, good morning. We are ready to start our 131st annual Claremont United Church of Christ Congregational meeting. I would like to welcome all of you who are here in the sanctuary with us today and those who are joining us online. My name is Linda Yao, and it has been a pleasure and an honor to serve as your moderator this year. I would like to open the meeting with a quote and a prayer. I'm on a step here, so I want to make sure I don't fall back. I'm going to open the meeting with a quote and then a prayer. The Christian life is not about God, the finger shaker or judge. It is not about believing now or being good now for the sake of heaven later. It's about entering a relationship in the present that begins to change everything now. This is a quote from one of my favorite authors, the late theologian Marcus Borg, and it's in his book, The God We Never Knew. Let us pray. Dear Creator, we thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We ask for your presence as we work through the business of our church. Help us remember that our goal is to continue the work that will change our world now. We ask this in your name, amen. Okay, the first order of business is to make sure we have quorum. We needed 87, and I believe we have it because of the absentee ballots, and there are 45 people here in the sanctuary, and I don't know the exact numbers yet of how many's online, but I think we can start. Before starting, I would like to go over some voting instructions. If you are in attendance here in the sanctuary, you will vote by raising your hands. If you are online, please use the chat and type yes, no, or abstain, and then type your name. If there are other members in the household, please repeat the process and be sure to type in your name to each vote. As we move through the process of conducting our business today, questions and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. So I believe our first order of business is a ballot measure to vote to approve the January 8th, 2023 Congregational minutes, meeting minutes. I need somebody to make that motion from the floor. Tad, thank you. And a second? Yes, Roy. And Roy Ginger. I'm having to hold this then. We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, edits to the minutes? Okay, so then we are going to go ahead and vote, and the motion is vote to approve the January 8th, 2023 Congregational meeting minutes. Those of you who are joining us online, please use the chat and type your vote, and be sure to type in your name, and then we'll go ahead and make the motion now. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. Do we have, thank you. All those oppose? And do we have any abstentions? Okay, one abstention, I see one. Okay, I think the motion passes. We'll then go into our pastor's report. Pastor Jen and Jacob, would you like to share with us?
Absolutely. First off, we want to start by thanking everyone in the congregation. This is a church dedicated to service, and we know that while we're on our sabbatical, this church is on good hands. So thank you to everyone who volunteers for the various ministries of Claremont United Church of Christ, for those of you who serve on our boards or committees here at the church, and thank you to our moderator team, Linda and Lynn and Rita, who do such an amazing job welcoming Ed Ritterbush into that fold in the year ahead. We have been blessed with some incredible moderators through the course of history here at Claremont UCC. So we want to talk about various ministries over the last year, and one part that I want to highlight is, of course, the pandemic has shifted so much of church ministry, which has created this larger digital footprint for Claremont United Church of Christ. So in addition to our sanctuary attendance each week, on Facebook and YouTube, the worship service is viewed on average 520 times through the course of the week. And in addition to that, on our podcast channel, the sermon is downloaded another 343 times each week. The result is that we have to constantly be thinking about ways in which we can make the in-person experience, and in addition, inviting folks in this digital world into the life of the church. We have good news on that front, which is we signed a contract for our new sound system. Yay! Thank you for your patience. It has created a lot of difficulties for hearing on Sunday mornings, but this new system is going to set us up for future success. We're going to be able to do sound mixing in the sanctuary for both in-person listeners and a separate mixing of audio for those watching on the live stream, both of which we've never been able to do before. We just have a button that can turn the sound up and down, but to actually balance the sound from the instruments to the speakers to the singers is going to be new territory for us, and that's part of continually thinking about what are ways in which we can engage with folks digitally in a way that engages them. In relation to that, we want to thank everyone for a very successful stewardship season. This is all about being rooted in community together, and we're grateful to be rooted with all of you. And some highlights from the stewardship season. This is just kind of a tough reality in churches across the nation with downward pressure and concepts of church membership and church attendance. The average amount of a pledge continues to decrease significantly, and so that makes it harder to get as many pledged dollars. What is good, though, here at Claremont UCC is that there were 60 new pledging families or individuals just this last year who did not pledge the year before. And so that's what helps us keep that forward momentum. That's kind of a challenge for a church, is that as big gifts go away for various reasons, perhaps loss in the community, it takes a lot of new gifts to make up for that one old gift that you lost. And so that's going to be part of what we think of moving forward into the future. That is a challenge. But what I wanted to also highlight that I mentioned in the service as well is that when we started here, 2016, pledging units were at $445,000 a year. They just crossed the $900,000 threshold. And so that helps us to do so much more ministry at Claremont UCC, to increase our mission budget, to be able to have the music program that we have here today, the resources that we channel into our children, youth, and family department, all because of the generosity of this church.
So I wanted to highlight a few things that have been going on. Our Board of Mission and Social Action this year was able to spend the most mission dollars in the history of the church this year in money that we gave away. So that's super exciting, and we should all be really proud of that. We're also trying some new hands-on ministry opportunities that I hope all of you take advantage of over the summer and join in. One is the Laundromat Love that you've heard about happening at the laundromat down the street. So we've done that twice now, where we go and we meet people from the community and we just pay for their laundry and start conversations with them and make connections. The other one is that we've experimented with feeding the community meals in different ways, either from our church basement and we go out and deliver them, or off-site. So keep your eyes out for more opportunities like that coming up this summer. Our blessing box continues to happen as a pop-up, and thank you to those of you who are dedicated volunteers with that ministry. It's really important. And so thinking about what matters has been something that we've really questioned coming out of the pandemic. What is the most important facet of our church community in a world that has changed so much since the pandemic? And one thing that we've seen emerge and become really strong are the fellowship groups here at the church. People were so hungry to come out of isolation and out of quarantine and make those connections, walk with each other through life. And so some of our fellowship groups this year had record attendance. The most people ever were attending them. And we've also launched 2 new fellowship groups, Glow and the Men's Fellowship. So hopefully you've heard about those and can join if those are applicable to you. I also want to highlight that our Stephen Ministry program is thriving. We have 11 new Stephen ministers coming into the program for a total of 18 that are being commissioned and recommissioned. And that's just really important to our church. These are lay leaders that are training to walk alongside people in the congregation who are going through difficult times in life. So if you're interested in Stephen ministry, think about joining in the future. And if you need a Stephen minister because you're going through a difficult chapter in life, we have an awesome team for you. Finally, you'll hear more about this from Pastor Laurel and from David and Alex, but I just want to highlight that those 2 areas of ministry are absolutely just taking off and growing and thriving at our church. We sent 14 youth to winter camp this year, and over 10 volunteers to our work camp, and it's just been really exciting to see our Children, Youth, and Families program continue to grow and thrive. And David and Alex, as you all experience on Sunday mornings, bring world-renowned musicians. We had Raven Chacon do his West Coast premiere here at the church, and that was just a really amazing historical moment for us to bring him.
I think we weren't allowed to use the word premiere, were we? We're doing it. It was a premiere. So something else I really want to highlight. So you know that the church has different designations that we've taken on as part of our identity. One, of course, that we talk a lot about is being an open and affirming church. We're also a creation justice church, a just peace church. Something else that's getting a lot of traction that's really important right now is we went through the process of becoming an accessible to all church. And during that process, we did an audit of our campus, of all our ministries, figured out ways in which we were not accessible and started to work to improve a lot of that, something like the handicap accessible ramp or the accessibility of our bathrooms. When we first applied, we were actually rejected, even though we met the threshold threshold of how many points on their system we needed because they wanted us to do more. And so we went back to the drawing board and we continued to do more. And so we are one of only 19 churches, that's not a lot, only one of 19 UCC churches in our country that have that designation of being accessible to all. But because of the work we're doing on that front, the conference is going to be recognizing Claremont UCC at our upcoming annual gathering, which is our annual meeting for our conference. I'm actually going to be serving on the conference accessibility team to help other churches go through this process of becoming more accessible. We created a video that's being shown around the country to churches going through this process. So if you saw the Friday email, there was a video link in there. You can see the video that was created. But that's something where I think we have a lot of opportunities for continued growth, both with being accessible to all and something called WISE, which is welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged on mental health. As we continue to see the mental health crisis that the pandemic has plunged us into, we're still grappling with what those 2 years of quarantine meant to our mental health. I think that can be a real opportunity for growth here at Claremont United Church of Christ. As a corollary to that, we're also thinking in the year ahead, after sabbatical, we come back, hopefully rejuvenated. We really want to think about what are ways in which we can continue to bring a progressive message into alternate worship experiences. So how can we, not just on Sunday mornings, be proclaiming this message of accessibility, of inclusion on mental health, of being open and affirming, and make sure in a world in which there's a lot of downward pressure against growth and progressivism, how can we say that the gospel of Christ is so much bigger than those words? And it's a message that can go and pierce every heart and make everyone feel loved and welcome. And so there's a lot of opportunity for growth in the year ahead, we think, in terms of creating those alternative worship experiences outside of our Sunday morning experience. Anything else you want to add, Jen? All right. We will miss you all very, very much. But we'll see you in the fall. That's it for us, Linda. Thank you. Oh! Can I say one more thing? And then Mel can ask a question. Go ahead, Mel. Happy 9th anniversary. Thank you. That was yesterday. Thank you. One more thing I wanted to mention. I served on the search committee to hire our new conference minister for the Southern California Nevada Conference of the UCC. We found a candidate who's absolutely amazing. Her name is the Reverend Dr. Monica Dawkins Smith. And when we were going through the interview process, to be honest, the whole concept of a conference is kind of losing relevancy in our country, sadly, because there's a lot of good work to be done. And so one of my questions is, like, what is your vision to make our conference relevant again? And she comes from an experience where she was in a place that wasn't ready for a black woman to be their leader previously. And I think we're ready here in Southern California Nevada Conference, of course. And she is ready for us to be the conference that shows the rest of the United Church of Christ what it means to be on the forefront of justice work. So I just want to put that on your radar, that we have this new conference minister coming in that we think is going to be helping us be a model for that kind of work in our denomination. So thanks, Linda.
Thank you. We'll now go ahead and start our staff reports, and the first will be from the Music and Fine Arts. I'm going to say her name because I learned to say it today, but I know, David, you're going to do it, so come on up. Our co-directors are Dr. Alexandra Grabarchuk, correct?
Perfect.
And Dr. David Rentz, and David,
Also
you're going
correct.
to do it. And you're going to give us the report. Thank you.
Thank you. So glad to be here with you, getting to talk, which I don't get to do very much, but actually I like to do. So it's been another good year for music. We had the Raven Chacon West Coast premiere of his Pulitzer Prize-winning Voiceless Mass. We had collaborations with Whittier College and Chaffey College. We hosted innumerable guest and friends of church recitals, concerts, and other sorts of musical events. There was just a fairly major academic conference that made use of our facilities on historic keyboard performance, using both the chapel and the sanctuary organs. And many of you were here just a week ago Saturday to hear the recital of our wonderful treble section leaders, Lacey, Devin, and Abby. We continue to work to bring music every Sunday that resonates with the themes of the week, with the scripture, with the longer themes as well, and I think generally succeed. For some weeks are tighter than others, but I think all of them work in one way or another. So a few other general highlights and things of note. We moved to a Sundays-only rehearsal schedule for the choir. We had previously rehearsed Wednesday evenings, and this was a pilot program that we have formally adopted. We've found that it allowed a number of folks who weren't able to participate before to begin participating. It cuts down on driving, which makes sense both from a practical lifestyle point of view and also from an environmental point of view. And though we enjoyed spending time together twice a week, it just made a lot of sense for a lot of our members, even though it makes for a pretty tiring Sunday rehearsing after church. Our handbell ensemble has had several successful performances over the course of the year, and we anticipate further good things from them going forward. We have brought in, on a provisional basis, a handbell director named Beth Mays-Lobig. She is connected to this congregation in various ways, and you'll get to know her next year. So she'll be leading the group, which will continue to rehearse on Monday nights, though Alex and I will keep ringing and working closely with them. And we'll see how bringing in someone whose email address is queenofhandbells@yahoo.com invigorates and revitalizes that group. Our Choral Scholars program continues well. We've been bringing in college students from the colleges where Alex and I teach, Whittier College and Chaffey College, to learn to grow as choral musicians and also to bring different voices and different faces to our group. They are paid a small honorarium for their weekly participation. Let's see. Other good stuff. Big collaborations with Claremont Community School of Music in December, with our Scout musicians, which was in February this year, with our musician in residence, Marie Tree Garrett, who you heard today and you hear on a monthly basis, and various other collaborators. Quick shout out or quick notice from the organ committee that we are bringing in two literally world famous organists for recitals in the fall and in the spring. Cameron Carpenter, who I think is probably the most famous organist alive, will be coming to give a recital in November. I thought for a moment October, but November 5th, and you'll be hearing a whole heck of a lot about that. And the principal organist of Notre Dame de Paris, Olivier Latry, will be in February. Alex and I heard him perform just randomly in Portugal 2 summers ago, and he is an absolutely spectacular and visionary musician. So got two great things coming from them. An ongoing goal is to do more with the fine arts part of our portfolio. So we continue to be open to ideas, since that's not our primary area of expertise, in ways that we can make things happen in fine arts. I believe that's all I have to say. It continues to be a pleasure to collaborate with Pastors Jen and Jacob, with Pastor Laurel, with Dr. Carrie Robertson, our principal organist, Jasmine Jocelyn, and the whole rest of the staff, not to mention poor David and Gio, who are going to have to clean up all of these flames when we're finished today. Any questions or anything anyone would like to hear more about from me? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. They're doing such a wonderful job by enriching our services. Thank you so much. All right, next up will be Reverend Laurel Capicius for Children, Youth, and Families.
Thanks, David. On an overlap of like my world and David's world, there is going to be some really amazing LGBTQ plus aligned music for my sermon series in June. So if you don't come for me, come for the music because it's going to be great. I am so excited to stand up here once again and talk about all of the amazing things that are happening. But I actually want to start with a story. And that story is from when I was a child, and I was at Walnut Hills United Methodist Church. There was an older man whose name is Chuck Wrinkle, may his soul rest in peace. And he was our version of the Sermon on the Steps, except his was always a basket message. We always had a basket that we brought up to him. And it was so exciting. It was the same thing. I was the same as these little kids running down, so excited to see Pastor Chuck. And as I grew older, and I no longer was able to come up on the steps, and I was sitting there as a teenager being bored and doodling on the bulletin, he came up to me every Sunday he saw me, and he said, "Hi, Laurel." And I said, "Hi, Chuck." And I was so not aware of what was happening in that moment. I was like 14. And I graduated and I went off to college and I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And I redirected real quick over to ministry and to seminary. And as I had gotten my seminary acceptance letter and I had started the process to become an ordained minister, I went back to my home church one Sunday. And Pastor Chuck, who had aged out of the Sermon on the Steps, but who came to church nonetheless, came up to me and said, "Laurel, you are going to be such a good pastor." Excuse me. Yes, you are. So I say this story because we have been selected as a church to join with Gen On Ministries. And this project is a Christian parenting project, but it's also about intergenerational ministry. And intergenerational ministry is distinguished from things like multi-generational ministry. And multi-generational ministry is when people of different generations are all in the same space, but they aren't really interacting with one another. And it's easy to do that because our society has told us that if you're 14, you're not going to be relatable to someone who's 40. And if you're 80, I mean, why even bother talking to people in their 20s? They're just, kind of young. They don't get it yet. But we're a church that believes in breaking down these kinds of societal expectations. And so my challenge for us as we go through this process, myself and one of my board members will be hearing resources from experts every month and bringing these resources back into our congregation and sharing them with you all. And my hope is that you can start to learn the names of some of our kids. It's such a simple thing, but it makes such a big difference. And then when they stand up here on graduation Sunday, you can see this child who's now become a young adult and who's going off into the world, and whether they become a pastor or a teacher or a scientist or some other amazing thing, you will be part of their story. So I am so excited for seeing how this challenge comes to fruition. I'm hoping that each one of you will seriously take this to heart and try to remember even one child's name. And try to say hi to that child every time you see them. And they might be shy. They might, kind of squirm away or not respond, but they notice, okay? We had 160 children come to our Sunday school in the past year. 110 of those came 2 or more weeks, and some of the 50 were graduated to our youth group program. So we have over 100 children. That's a lot of names, but I would love for you to just learn one. And so another part of that is you will see, I took down the signs this morning, but you're going to see we're reserving a pew. I'm sorry if it was your pew. We're reserving a pew for our youth group on Sunday mornings. And so we're bringing them into the church space to make sure that they know this is their home too, that they are welcome here, and that they can learn the ways of our church, the ways of justice and of faith. I think I've talked your ears off a little much, but if you have any questions for me, you know where to find me. I'll be here. My email's on the back of the bulletin, and I love chatting with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Laurel. Before we get to our treasurer's report, I just want to make a note. Christy Knight was not available today, but I wanted to report on the Early Childhood Center. That center is thriving. Throughout the year, they have served over 100 families, and they've maintained a 95% enrollment through most of the year. I encourage you to read Christy's report. It's on page 9 of your packet, and we will be going over the Early Childhood Center's financials in the Treasurer's Report. So the next is our Treasurer's Report, and David Coons is going to be doing that today.
Okay. Yes, I just want to make a couple of comments about this year's budget before we go on to voting on the budget for next year. So would you want to go to the next slide, please? So as Linda said, the Early Childhood Center is thriving. If looking at the monthly financial reports, this year their income has been trailing a bit behind the projection, but there is a reason for that. The income projection is not just a guess. It's based on the tuition commitments that families have made. But those commitments can change during the year, and this year there were a few cases where people had signed up to come a certain number of days of the week, but then cut that back, and when that happens, the tuition is less. But the ECC has also done a great job with keeping their expenses lower than expected, so they are headed to end up the year in the black. It's also important to note that the ECC has about $40,000 in its reserve fund, and as of the end of April, they were running a $42,000 budget surplus. On the church side, the church is also doing well, and we expect to end the year in the black. The income, especially from contributions, are right on track, but I want to note that they're not ahead of where we'd like to be. So if you have made a pledge, it's very important that you complete your pledge by the end of the year, and if you want to slip in an extra 100 between now and June 30th, that would be a great idea too. The church is also doing a very good job in keeping its expenses in check, even though we've had some challenges for, just like your gas bill has been up this year, the church's gas bill has been up quite a bit, and that line is going to go over, but there are other things that will be less. It's also good to note that the church has a reserve fund which now has about $180,000 in it, so we are in good shape. I wanted to just make a comment about the capital campaign too, if we could, okay. So as you remember from before, when we got to the end of the first phase of the capital campaign, about $1.2 million had been given or pledged. Right now we're in a pause in the campaign, but stay tuned, that will be changing. And it's great to be able to report that we have just a little over $1 million of that 1.2 in hand. And then as people continue to pay their pledges, that will move up towards $1.2 million. But it's very good news to have that $1 million in hand, because the projected cost of our first project, the heating and cooling system for the sanctuary, has a price tag of a little over $900,000. So we have the money we need to do that project. The project will be happening over the next, we would say like the next 10 months. It should be completed by, say, March of next year. So, and we don't have to pay for everything at once. We pay in installments. So we had some money that was just sitting in the bank that we didn't need to spend yet, and we weren't getting any interest on it. So the Stewardship and Finance and the Council approved a plan to move $600,000 from our bank accounts to interest-bearing accounts, either CDs or there's an organization called United Church Funds, and that's where we have our endowment. They also have a fund that we can invest in, so it's not endowment, but we'll earn between 4 and 5% annually on that money, and a similar rate for the CDs. So any comments or questions about that stuff before we go to the next year's budget? If not, so we decided that the way to do this, Linda, is to put this forward as a motion for the, okay. So the Stewardship and Finance Board and the Church Council are proposing the budgets for the Early Childhood Center and for the church for next year. And so that motion is now on the floor, and I want to make a couple comments about that, but if there are any questions based on what you saw in the packet, we could take those.
David, go ahead and make your comments about the proposed budget for Early Childhood Center and the church, and then we'll take the motion separately.
Okay. So this just for the ECC. Okay. Yes. Can we go back on the slide?
Are you talking about the comments that he has? Okay. Jean, can you back up the slide to the comments? I think he has. The numbers is what he wants.
So the ECC has a proposed budget for next year of, as you see, $1.4 million. That's up by 12%. And they are projecting an increase in tuition by 7%. Demand for the program is very strong. They they take in as many children as they can. So, if there are no other questions or comments, let's vote on the...
David, we're going to have to move to the second ballot measure. So that motion, if you want to go ahead and do it, will be, you're going to be voting to approve the proposed 2023-2024 annual budget for the Early Childhood Center. And this motion comes to you from the council, so I will not need a second. Any discussion? Any questions? Okay, I'm going to repeat the motion. We are now going to vote on the ballot measure, vote to approve the proposed 2023-24 annual budget for the Early Childhood Center. For those of you who are voting online, you may go ahead and start voting now. And let's go ahead and start making our count in the sanctuary. All those in favor of approving the budget for the Early Childhood Center, please raise your hand and keep them up until they get the count. Okay, we just said all those who approved it. How many noes? Raise your hand, please. Okay, any abstentions? No abstentions, all right. I think we need to wait for the for the online votes to come in. I didn't do that at the last one. Tad, what are the numbers for the in-house? 52. Yes. No no's, okay. 9 online, okay. I believe we don't have any no's, so I believe that motion has been approved. Now we'll go back then to your comments about CUCC budget. Have you already done it? You want to make a motion for that?
Yes, why don't you read the
motion? All right,
motion?
let's go ahead and start the motion for the proposed 2023-24 annual budget for Claremont United Church of Christ. This motion also comes from the council and has been approved by the council and forwarded to the congregation. Any discussions, any questions about the budget for the Claremont United Church of Christ?
Yes, and I just wanted to point out that the next year's budget is a 6% increase over the current year. And I also wanted to note an important point that next year's budget does not rely on any projected surplus from this year, meaning that if there is any surplus from this year, that money can be moved into the reserve fund. This was not true last year, so it's really good that we are able to do this year.
If there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead. The motion was made and it's brought to you from the church council. So we don't need a second. No other questions. I'm going to repeat the motion and we're going to start the vote after. Vote to approve the proposed 2023-2024 annual budget for the Claremont United Church of Christ. Those of you who are voting online, please start voting in the chat. And raise your hands in-house if you are approving it. I'm sorry, what was that again? 53 in the sanctuary, and then let's wait for the online votes. Oh, let's do the, let me get the yes votes, but we'll do the no votes. Thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and do the no votes now. All those not in favor of the proposed budget, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. Any abstentions? Okay. Eight online yeses. Thank you. All right, so we have a budget to work on starting July 1st. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Capital campaign updates. I have asked Jacob and Bob Perry to give us an update.
First and foremost, we need to just start with a round of applause for this gentleman to my right. If we can thank Bob Perry, who we owe an immense amount of gratitude. Bob is the chair of our Building and Grounds Board. He's a landscape architect by profession and has been giving so many hours of his life to projects here at the church. Someone yesterday took me aside to comment how beautiful our courtyard looks right now, which is the work of Bob and Tad and others who have put their own sweat and labor into that. So thank you, Bob, for all that you're doing. I'm going to hand the microphone over to him, but just a quick update. HVAC system, they're going to start preliminary work before we get the materials over the course of these next few months, doing duct work, getting everything ready. We should have the materials in hand January 2024. It was a 48-week wait time. And then once we have those materials, it should be a few months of installation. They know that they're not going to interrupt Sunday service, so that's not going to be an issue. And so we're thankful for that. But we're also in the mix of starting projects numbers 2 and 3. Number 2 being making sure that all of our bathrooms on campus are accessible. And so Bob and our Building and Grounds Board have been doing some great work, potentially lining up someone who's going to do that design work. Maybe you'll have a few comments on that. And also Bob has been working on designs along with the Claremont Environmental Design Group for our Memorial Garden expansion. And so that's going to be project number 3. Project number 6 was our technology upgrades, and we decided to kick that up a notch with our sound system upgrade. So a little bit of funds went into the sound system upgrade, but everything is in motion. So I want to thank everyone for being very diligent. For those of you who pledged over 3 years, giving your second installment, we're really grateful for that, and that's been allowing us to be in a position to start moving on all of these projects. So Bob, thank you for your work, and look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Jacob, and want to acknowledge that when I first became a member of this church, it took me a while to find my place. And that was sort of the message that was offered to us, to look around to find where you could contribute. And I must say I'm very happy to be on the Board of Building and Grounds and working with a wonderful group of volunteers as well in this regard. And want to say that, yes, the Capital Campaign Program is focused on physical improvements, things that really make our home campus work for all of us in many, many ways. And much attention has gone to the air handling project as one of those top priorities. But want to assure you that over the past year, our board has been looking at the next projects in line and have been engaged in looking for the designers, particularly from local businesses and groups that can participate with us, provide us with information, and help us proceed in a way where we've learned things. The COVID process and the air handling project have really brought to our attention the need to get a lot of information up front, to acknowledge that costs are going up, that the process tends to be much more complicated, and our board is working with a lot of those issues at this time. With regard to the improvement of our bathrooms, to achieve that 100% level of sustainability, we're really happy to know that in our community we have some designer contractors with experience and with an interest to actually contribute some of their time and support for these efforts to achieve those upgrades. And we will continue that effort into this next fiscal year, hoping to bring that project right to the point of being ready when funding's available to go forward. Similarly, the process for the Memorial Garden is going forward into a study phase where we are exploring options and concepts for what the potential of the future would be for this garden, and in that regard have again engaged local business. The EDG are going through design ideas and making sure that they're well vetted, and in that process exploring the budget costs with options that give us choices as we move towards that project realization. So just want to say that from my perspective, working on the board and with the group that we have and will have in the future, we're doing things that really are literally transforming the physical nature of this campus, and we think it really does contribute to the overall mission of the church as a whole. And I thank you for the opportunity to participate. Any questions? Great. Okay.
You're going to make the
Oh,
motion,
with that,
please.
yes. I have responsibilities other than just talking. I have a motion to present to you today with regard to clarifying and reinforcing something that's already in our church bylaws that recognizes the role of the council in making decisions. So let me read this motion here and then ask for a second. The motion is to vote to grant church council authority to sign contracts and accept or reject bids for the remaining projects identified in the capital campaign. So this currently is the nature of our bylaws, and in that regard, wanted to make sure that the congregation was clear on it, bringing it to a motion. I would look for a second and any discussion.
Is there a second?
Okay, Lynn, I'll go for Lynn
All right,
Childress
thank you.
to second the motion. And a call for discussion or questions in this regard. Tad. This has come through council discussion at this point in time. It's led to this motion. Did I see another question in the back? Yes.
This is really a council, so it's going to be the moderator or any of your designated church leaders to sign contracts. But I want you to remember that we always will try to be as transparent as possible so that the congregation is aware of the process, where the money's coming from. Those are things that are in the works right now. There's really no change at this point. Well, you know, it will allow us to go ahead and proceed with the process without calling congregational meetings for emergency meetings to move forward on these particular projects. That's what it is. Yes, yes, of course. Right. The HVAC system was just a little more expensive than we thought this year. Was just a little more expensive than we thought it was going to be initially. So, but I think your leadership, and I'm part of it right now, is pretty disciplined in making sure that the congregation is aware, especially if we're going to be looking at other funds other than the capital campaign funds. So they're working within that budget. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there is a motion, and did I have a second? Yes, I did. Lynn, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead, and if there are no more questions, I'm going to read the motion. Vote to grant Church Council authority to sign contracts and accept or reject bids for the remaining projects identified in the capital campaign. So I'll go ahead and start the motion. Folks online, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and going to the chat and voting on this action, and we'll start here. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I'm sorry, 42, thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I don't see anything. Abstentions? Okay, in-house vote is 42, and I think we should wait for the online. Okay. No abstentions or no's? Okay. I think the motion passes. Thank you very much. Our next item will be the leadership roster, and Lynn Childress is going to be making that presentation.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am your incoming moderator starting July 1st. So thank you for the honor to serve the congregation. I'm going to read the various nominees for the boards, and please forgive me if I butcher anyone's names. I will do my best and get through it quickly. For the Board of Arts and Education, we have Ann Olander, John Llewellyn, Camille Butts, Ann Daly, Jen Gillette, Tom Gershon, Mel Boynton, Jenny Tyniak. Board of Buildings and Grounds, Man D, Marcy Ellison, Al Shine, Janet Stevenson, Bob Perry, Denise Spooner, Ralph Patterson, Steve Syverson. Board of Children, Youth and Families, Carolyn Barbera, Nancy Felix, Carol Lee Marshall, Hannah Moe, Kristen Gershon, Aaron Paul Lopez, Nancy Jordan, Heather Savandes, and Board of Deacons, Amaya Adamiak, Judy Bayer, Tina Kambarian, Ralph Samudio, Karima Tahir, Yasaman Maradi, Denise Solis, Kathy Leo, Heidi Arch, Diana Alvarado Syverson, Ron Sherman, Leah May Bird. Board of ECC, Trina Keel, Peggy Kelly, Kathy Pryor, Ellen Fake, Allison Martinez, Cynthia Galvez, Valerie Roundtree, Natalie Buck. And you can see the asterisks of parent members. Board of Fellowship, Chelsea Blakely, Annie Forberger, Erica Ojeda, Jesse Ortega, Melissa Rivera, Taryn Hinderlin, Lou Palos, Rick Rogers. Board of Mission and Social Action, Jean Boutillier, Veronica Hernandez, Harry McCoy, Uriel Ojeda, Bob Salinger, Mel Parangayo, Chantal Steiber, Tom Morell. Staff Parish Relations, Glenn Trost, Tad Creasy, Kirby Palmer, Susan Hancock. Board of Stewardship and Finance, Patrick Layer, Spike Murray, Dennis Vlasic, Celeste Irwin, Jim Proust, John Townswick, Emily King, Hilda Garcia. Women's Fellowship, Ann Sonner, Karima Tahir. Governance Committee, Janet Vandervender, Bill Dorman, Mark Carlson, Chris Fossum, Dick Archibald, Paul Held. Executive Committee, past moderator Linda Yao, moderator Lynn Childress, moderator-elect Ed Ritterbusch, treasurer Justin Webb, clerk Peggy Perry, historian Ann Sonner. Investment Committee, Jeff Stark, Ellen Laszlo, Ruth Abel, Jack Mills, Roger Lubes, Joe Marino. Nominating Committee, Kay Held, Lori Jenkins, Guy Nakahama. Thanks for everyone who accepted these nominations, and I will pass it on to Linda to give us our ballot measure.
All right, the ballot measure we'll be voting on, and I won't need a second because this is also coming from the Church Council. Vote to approve new officer and board members for 2023-24. A motion, I don't need a second. Any questions or discussions? Yes, Mel. That was something we made up last year, but it is the bylaws. It's the bylaws committee. It just got printed wrong. It should have been the bylaws committee. We were going to combine it with policies and procedures, but they tried it for a year and it wasn't going to work. It was just two different pieces that was hard to merge. So the governance committee is really the bylaws and won't be making, actually we won't have to make the change. You'll see it next year under bylaws, as bylaws. Any other questions? Okay, I think we are ready for the vote. I'm going to repeat the ballot measure. Vote to approve new officer and board members for 2023-24. Those of you who are voting online, please go ahead and type in your vote, and we will go ahead and start the vote in-house. All those in favor, please raise your hand. (41) yes. All those opposed to this ballot, please raise your hand. Thank you. No, that's nice. Any abstentions? I don't see any. Okay, then we'll just wait for the online. 10 yes online. And I'm assuming no no's or abstentions. Okay. All right, I think that passes. Thank you very much. And I think we're going to, oh, I do want to do something. Hang on. Lynn, this is for you. Don't make me come down the steps.
Well, Linda, as you recognize the person taking your place, we want to thank you for your year of service. So if we could say thank you to Linda Yao, who has been an incredible moderator. Linda, we are so grateful for you. She has also invested so much time and diligence, and we'll be losing from our moderator team, Rita Dixon. Rita, you two will be missed. Thank you for 3 years of service. We are really, really grateful. And before Linda closes us out, one more round of applause, if we could, for our team in the back, Jenna and David and Michael and whoever else is back there running our online stream, if we could thank them.
Okay, and I'll add to the thank yous first. Jean Boutillier, he did our projectionist. He was our projectionist this morning. Thank you, Jean. And those of you who counted the in-house votes, Tad Creasy and Donna Bernard, please give them a hand, because really without these folks, this meeting would be very chaotic. All right, I would like to ask Jen to please close the meeting with a prayer.
Let's pray. Living Holy Spirit of God, we are so grateful that you have called us together in this place to do ministry together. And we are so grateful that you do not leave us alone, but that you guide us and lead us every step of the way. And we are relying on you to continue guiding and leading us into the future. And we will follow without fear, because we are courageous in your amazing, towering spirit. In Christ's name we all pray, and we'll say together, amen.
Thank you, Jen, and safe trip to you and your family. And thank you for joining us today. We are adjourned.